Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's episode of Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys swinging by the channel to spend some time with me today on today's episode. Guys, we're going to be talking about the fall turnover today. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but this is something that happens every fall. I'm going to explain to you what it is and how it affects the bass, and more importantly, some of the techniques that you can use to catch fish when this happens. So we'll get into that in today's video. And also guys, I'll be talking about some lures that work really good in the fall turnover, and I'll link every lure that I talk about in my Tackle Warehouse link in the description of this video. If you guys want to use that link to get some of those baits or whatever you're looking for, good way to support the channel and get you some good baits for the fall turnover. Okay, now without getting all scientific here like a biology lesson, basically what the fall turnover is, it's when the surface temperatures of the water begin to cool off in the fall time. You know, we have cooler nights, especially into October. And once that surface temperature starts cooling off, the water gets denser, begins to sink, and it sort of mixes with the water throughout the lake. And, several different factors change, during the fall turnover. You have some oxygen levels that change, but the primary thing that you notice is when this surface water begins to sink and mixes, it sort of stirs up the sediment that's on the bottom, the particulate and all the debris. And a lot of times the way that you notice a fall turnover taking place is the water sort of turns a funky looking color. Now, this is specifically noticeable in your deeper man-made reservoirs, because in the deeper man-made reservoirs, this is where the thermoclines form better than or more than any other type of water, whether it be a shallow lake or a river. So this is sort of a phenomena for man-made reservoirs where this fall turnover is really significantly, you can see it visually. Now, throughout the lake, some parts of the lake can be affected more than the other. It's not like all of a sudden the lake turns over and it gets this pea green, funky looking color all over the lake. There's certain parts of the lake that are more affected than others. And a lot of times there's no rhyme or reason why that happens. It just is where it is. But ultimately what happens is when that water mixes and it begins to turn up, it changes the water clarity, it gets the particulate flowing throughout this whole system, and it can really negatively affect the bite. I mean, there's a period when this fall turnover is really in full swing that the fishing gets pretty tough during that period. But there's a couple of different things that you can, do to capitalize on that. Now, there's a couple different factors with this. You do have some lakes, even the deeper man-made lakes, where this turnover is not as pronounced. And what happens during the fall turnover is your thermoclines disappear and your oxygen levels get more suitable, deeper. So I want to talk about what happens on those deeper lakes that don't have that, sort of that muck that's stirred up a little bit, and how those fish get deeper. And then also with the lakes that the muck gets stirred up and the water gets sort of that green color. Now, if the lake that you're fishing has this noticeable turnover where maybe it starts smelling a little bit, maybe you're back in a creek arm and it's got this funky looking color to it, this is going to put the bass shallow. This is the number one thing that you need to remember on a visible fall turnover lake where you lose your water clarity and have some funky color to the water. It's gonna put those fish really shallow. And there's three different lures that I like to fish this time of year. One is some type of a dark jig. This is my Blaukat throwback jig, black and chartreuse with a black chunk. I like a dark silhouetted jig because this water, usually that pea green looking color, and there's something about the black and chartreuse with the black that stands out really good. So like with all the lures I'm going to talk about here, when you have that green looking nasty color on the water, move up and fish whatever cover you have available in your lake. If you got docks that are in 2 foot of water, fish some docks. If you got shallow grass or lily pads or stumps or rocks, whatever it is, you want to concentrate on water that is less than 4 feet deep, and moreover on water depths that are under 3 feet deep, because most of the time when that water's all green mucky, the visibility on it's pretty poor. But a black and chartreuse jig is a really good choice to it. Second choice with it is a spinnerbait. Spinnerbait in the same type of water is really, really good. Just fishing a spinnerbait around shallow objects. These would be my two choices if I do have some wood or grass or like pads in the water. And then finally, if your lake just has rock or gravel or clay, a bright square bill crankbait, Megabass S Crank 2.0 here, blackback chartreuse side, something that's bright that will really stand out in that dirty greenish looking water. Now the flip side of the coin is this is not what happens throughout the lake in every lake. A lot of times when you have that fall turnover and that, that water temperature starts getting a little bit denser and sinking, your thermoclines dissipate and the fish can now go deeper, because in the summertime of the year on a lot of deep lakes, when you have a thermocline, your oxygen levels are really poor in that deeper water below 30 feet. But in the fall time of the year, when you lose that thermocline and you have that fall turnover, this is one of the best times of the year, guys, to fish really deep on the bottom. Now, one of my favorite techniques for fishing during the fall turnover on a lake that does not have any type of water clarity disruption, but the thermocline is not there anymore, is get out on the main lake bluff banks. If you have bluffs on your lake, or if you have a bank that has the river channel or the channel hits the bank and it's got super deep water off of it, and you got clear water, if you've got water visibility over 4 or 5 feet on the lake that you fish, not all lakes have that, but if you do, get out there on those bluff banks and those steep channel banks on the main lake and fish a big heavy jig, like a 3/4 ounce football head jig, and just cast it to the bank and work it down as deep as 40, 50, 60 feet on the bottom. You're not dragging this thing. You want those steeper banks. So I catch a lot of fish in late October and November, that like down here in the White River chain where I'm at, Table Rock, Bull Shoals, all that type of stuff, in 45 to 60 feet deep. And again, I like to take like some type of brown football head jig, 3/4 ounce, 15-pound test Seaguar and Vizex line, cast it up to that bluff and just work it down super, super deep, deeper than what most people think. And also you can catch them on, deeper on points too, but I really do like the bluff banks more than anything else. So really it just depends on the lake setup, as far as how significant the effect of the fall turnover is. I've seen some years where, whatever the reason, maybe a lack of current, maybe low water, whatever, that the water is really, it looks like pea green soup. I mean, it's got like a sort of a slime floating on the top of it. And I've seen other times where I haven't hardly noticed anything. So there's a lot of different variables to determine that. But if you stay with those two techniques I just talked about, you should be able to catch fish throughout that whole fall turnover. So I hope it helps out, guys. We'll talk later.